hope you're doing great. We are going to pick up where you left off last week, where Moses was in the wilderness with the Israelites. Today, we are going to add a new part to that story. Part of that story where we are going to learn about a new term called idolatry. Now, in today's lesson is called the golden calf. And the golden calf is an idol that is built during the story. An idol still can happen today. A lot of times people will have idols, sometimes and may not even realize it. But the definition of an idol is anything that someone can choose to do instead of worshiping God or giving time to God. Our big picture question is, what is God's plan? So God's plan is to rescue us from captivity. So let's find out how he helps rescue us from captivity in the story of the golden calf. Now, Moses and the Israelites were in the wilderness, and God had delivered them from slavery in Egypt from the Pharaoh and his pursuing army. The Israelites came to Mount Sinai, and they had camped there in front of the mountain. Moses went up to the mountain and spoke to him. Now, I feel like that's pretty amazing. Now, while Moses was on the mountain, God had a lot to tell Moses. In fact, Moses was on Mount Sinai for 40 days and 40 nights. Meanwhile, the Israelites were at the bottom of the camp, and they were beginning to get impatient because that's a long time they were there, wondering what was going on with Moses. So they were actually wondering, where is Moses? Why is it taking him so long? Is he still even alive? These are questions they were probably asking. Well, because they were getting impatient, they started doing things they did not need to do. So the Israelites decided to go to Moses' brother, Aaron, and they asked him to make a god to lead us. Is that a good thing? No, that's horrible. So Moses led us out of Egypt, but we don't know what has happened to him, is what they were telling Aaron. So Aaron went along with them. Not a good choice. But he went along with them, and he made a golden calf that they could worship. Now God saw what the people were doing, and he was angry because of their sin. So God told Moses to go down the mountain, and God told him, I will destroy these people, God said. So, is that a good thing for them or not a good thing for them? Probably not. So let's see what happens next. So Moses actually told God, he said, please forgive them. Remember the great promise you made for Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. You promised to give them as many offspring as there are stars in the sky. You promised to bless them and give them land. So, after this conversation, God decided not to destroy his people. Moses then went down the mountain, and he carried 2 stone tablets on which God had written the laws. What do you think those laws are? You're right, the 10 Commandments. So, he got closer to the camp, and he saw that the people were dancing before the golden calf. He threw down the stone tablets, smashing them at the bottom of the mountain. Then he destroyed the calf they made. So Moses was angry. He said, what were you thinking? He's asking Aaron. And the people were out of control. The next day, Moses said, I will go up to the Lord. Maybe I can do something to make up for your sin. So Moses went back up the mountain to talk to God. These people have sinned against you, and they made God a god out of gold for themselves. Moses said, please forgive their sin. God told Moses to return to the people. When the time comes, I will punish them for their sin, God said. Then the Lord sent a plague, a terrible sickness, to the people because they worshiped the golden calf. God continued to meet with Moses and give him laws and instructions. He made 2 more stone tablets to replace the ones that were broken. And One morning, Moses went up to the mountain to meet with God. The Lord came down in a cloud, and he said, Yahweh is a compassionate and gracious God, but he will not leave the guilty unpunished. Moses bowed down and he worshiped God. Lord, please go with us, he said. Forgive our sins and accept us as your people. Now, that's a pretty intense story. But it shows that God still has grace, even when we don't deserve it sometimes. Now, our Christ connection today is that God's people sinned against God, and then Moses asked God to forgive them. Moses acted as their mediator, and he stood in for them before God. Moses could not do anything to make up for their sin. But we have a better mediator. Our mediator is Jesus. So Jesus, when he died on the cross, he paid for our sin on the cross and stood for us before God. When we trust in Jesus, our sins are forgiven.